And welcome you to the July 1st, 2019 Salina City Commission meeting. Too many letters on this. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
Commissioner Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick.
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here. If you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We don't have any official awards and proclamations, but I think the building authority should be commended for these wonderful new chairs we're sitting in here. I'm assuming that they are the source of the chairs, but I don't know that for a fact. If so, thank you. Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity if anyone would like to address the commission. I'd like you to limit your comments to 5 minutes, and if it's a question that can get a quick answer, the city manager would probably be the one to do that, but please feel free to come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Commissioners and the public out there. I'm here basically to speak on several issues, two that are combined and one that is separate. I'm a lifetime Salina resident and the last of 5 generations still living here. I'm also a Realtor Emeritus with over 44 years of real estate experience in sales, real estate and commercial rental management, appraisals, construction and development in the Salina area and elsewhere. I have also rehabilitated a number of buildings in Salina and around the state of Kansas, including 2 that were either just under or over 100 years old at the time we rehabbed them. I feel it is absolutely a crime and shameful for our city commission to be considering providing the developers of the old Lee Hardware building, if what I have been told is true, an additional $500,000 of taxpayer money. This is taking into account that we are already providing them via special programs being offered to individuals investing in our downtown redevelopment area with significant benefits, which include huge property tax relief, access to special low-rate subsidized financing, and via taxpayer funds, significant infrastructure improvements for their property at no cost to them have already happened. You would think that this would be enough for anyone, but it is not at the end of the foolishness of many of our city commissioners and others to be considering an additional $500,000 of taxpayer money for a project that will be competing with the rest of us out there that provide housing to people in our community. It gives them a way under investment, return on their investment. I also feel that we need to be sure they have a substantial investment of their own funds, not just borrowed or gifted funds in the project if we want to see it to have longevity and success. Nothing motivates an investor more than it being their own money invested instead of just borrowed money or gifted money and benefits. I also feel that we should strongly consider and require that they provide a minimum of 2 parking spaces per apartment unit at an absolute minimum, as you would and have every other developer in the community that I'm aware of. It's what you were going to require of my investor on the Uptown Apartments when we were trying to get 26 additional units built there. And then it got killed because of the rezoning of the property across the street from us. In all the years I've been in real estate management, I've never had a tenant that didn't have at least 1 or more vehicles. So the argument that, well, gee, not everybody's going to have a car just doesn't fly in reality. Or if it does, it will be the very rare exception, not the rule. Also, even if they should not happen to have a car, I'll guarantee you they're going to have multiple friends that do. We are going to have a parking crisis in that area of downtown Salina anyway if everything that's being done there is successful, and it would be foolish to allow a developer to develop a building without providing the adequate parking for it and for the tenants he's going to have, especially with all the other benefits that developer is getting. That's basically what I've got to say on those issues and that. Also, I want to talk to you about another issue I have in Salina, and that is the intentional manufacturing of potholes in Salina when you rehab a street in Salina. I don't know if you've noticed, but in a lot of the overlay projects, they are leaving the lids to the various access points in the street at their original depth. And then you've got a 3 to 6 inch pothole that was just built in that process. This is hard on vehicles, especially where in a lot of areas in town where that's happened, those man-made potholes are right in the tire traffic area, and you've got to swerve to avoid them, which also makes it much more dangerous to be driving in Salina. I was real happy to see on the 9th Street redevelopment that they raised the meter lids to the level of the paving and didn't leave them at the lower level in that rehab project. This should be required of every contractor. They should have to raise those lids to the new level of paving, or at most not more than a ½ inch off of the new level of paving. It's hard on suspensions, it's hard on tire and wheel alignment. It can create both safety issues if people are swerving to miss them, to avoid having their undercarriage rattled hard. And it's just foolish when we've already got enough potholes in our paving that Mother Nature provides us to be manufacturing new ones intentionally. It goes even a little further when you get on Broadway Street between Crawford and Cloud Street, where the drainage, storm sewer drainage grates were left at the original height in the curbing area along Broadway. If two cars are side by side when you get to that, if either one swerves a little, somebody can get forced and have their tire drop down into that deep hole in the situation I'm referring to, and that can cause severe damage to their vehicle, possibly cause them to lose control and have a bad accident. And in my opinion, that puts the city extremely at risk for lawsuits if that should happen. I've gotten squeezed a couple times, just barely missed having a tire drop into one of those myself. And I'm a fairly defensive driver, and the main reason was I thought I saw it was going to happen and I had braked and was able to be behind that car when it came into my lane a little. And I doubt if that's as rare a situation happening as I would hope it would be. But please consider the safety of the people in our community and our pocketbooks, and require that all of those in the future, and maybe immediately with the repaving you're doing on Franklin, where they're making potholes again, by the way, in that area there behind Dillon's, to make that be changed so that we're not creating these problems. If there's any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
I think you've given us enough homework to do. Is there any immediate thoughts on the potholes or the utility depressions? Mr. Koenig.
Right now, we have microsurfacing and ultra-thin bonded asphalt surfacing taking place all over town. The microsurfacing is usually about a ½ inch thick. In some places, if the roadway's rutted, it might be a little thicker than that. The ultra-thin bonded asphalt is 5/8 inch thick. And generally, we are leaving the existing manholes in their current locations unless they were low to start with, and then they will be adjusted later on this year. So 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch is, in our minds, acceptable.
And I would add, Commissioners, you may recall there's been ongoing conversation about Ohio and some of those manholes, and you've had multiple communications, including a commission information memorandum in one of your past packets, that we spoke to what our intention is there in terms of raising the manholes, and 9th Street is a good example of concrete work there. We attempted to try a different solution that was an experiment that we acknowledged didn't turn out the way that we wanted it to, so we're doubling back and trying to get the Ohio manholes to be comparable to the 9th Street manhole. So we're definitely aware of the issue and the difficulty that causes. We actually, in the process of trying to subcontract that to get a better product, recognize there's some time delays there, and we're continuing to try to troubleshoot that process.
Would you dare want to expound upon the loan that we've made to the developers of the Lee buildings?
Right. That entire project predates, I think, many of you, if not all of you on the commission. That's been an identified goal for a number of years. It was identified in the housing study. There's quite a bit of discussion about the economics of certain housing products and whether they do or don't work. The housing study spoke to the fact that we've not had what we call market rate apartments in decades, Chapel Ridge being probably the most recent example. And so the discussion that the multiple commissions had was a desire to try to facilitate market rate apartments in the community in hopes of demonstrating there's a market for that and essentially priming the pump in terms of getting the development community to see the value in it and then independently invest in additional market rate apartment projects. And so the loan that has been granted is past the point of no return. You took action on that recently, but it was in return for 1/3 of the 53 units in that first phase being at market rate. So it was kind of a calculated agreement and strategy on the part of the city to try to foster market rate development in the community. With respect to property tax relief, definitely, in addition to the loan, it was a very deliberate decision over multiple commissions to amend the neighborhood revitalization program to provide for a 95% property tax rebate for 15 years for projects that we created a new category of projects of exceptional community significance. And that standard was essentially investment over $10 million and more than 50 units, which that project met. In terms of infrastructure improvements, I'm not aware of any infrastructure improvements that we've made specifically for that project at their financial benefit beyond what we would be doing in the downtown. There was coordination in terms of location of their storm sewer discharge and our storm sewer inlets, but I don't know that we've done anything infrastructure-wise that directly benefited them financially. But that's a long way of saying I don't necessarily disagree with Mr. Holmes' characterization of what we've provided, but it was very deliberate on our part. We've, over, 6 to 8 years or more, dealt with 4 different developers trying to find a way at that particular location in the Lee buildings, not to mention other developers just more generally in the community, to try to come up with some market rate apartments in hopes that we can demonstrate the market and revitalize that particular housing product in the community.
Thank you. I truly could not have said it that well. Thank you.
And there is parking. What, do you remember what the?
Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
There is parking, and what I would tell you is we're treating them consistently with our parking requirements in the downtown. So they're not getting any favorable treatment. There is a different approach to parking in the downtown than just a multifamily residential product elsewhere, on the premise that there's, you may have seen in the recent Commission information memorandum that there's 1,863 parking spaces spread across the downtown. So our approach to parking in the downtown is not on-site parking for every project, but with respect, in fact, no on-site parking is required for a commercial project. But in the case of multifamily, there remains a proportional parking requirement, and they are not getting any relief from that requirement.
And just one final thing, Mr. Holm. If you could make sure that you get a list of the streets that are affected, that you have specific concerns with beyond Broadway from Cloud to Crawford, and I think Franklin was the other one that you mentioned.
Franklin and side streets off of it that are being resurfaced.
Okay, and if there's any.
On the action, see the man-made potholes I talked about, unless they got it corrected.
Thank you.
One other thing on the downtown parking that I'd just like to add, that the preliminary development did show some on-site parking, but as you've seen downtown, we're redoing the angle parking. We are dieting putting a road diet on Iron and Ash to add additional parking for downtown with angle parking. And subsequent to the Lee development, we're looking at angle parking in that block north of Elm Street, which will add a significant number of spaces to the downtown parking inventory.
Now, the parking spots on the street, can that be specifically set aside for those residents, as I understand it?
No.
Or can it? Cannot be? Mr. Holm, come on.
Perhaps I was made aware of something differently than what is the case. That $500,000 is a loan, not a gift?
Yes, it is structured as a loan. There was acknowledgement as part of the staff report and the discussion that took place that if they can involve not-for-profit entities and get it structured correctly, they may come back and ask that that loan be forgiven. But the way that it's structured is as a loan with the full amount payable at the maturity of the loan.
That I'm not as much opposed to. I just would be opposed to it being forgiven. And that, but we need to require they provide enough parking spaces, because there aren't enough parking spaces now. If that bowling alley's going and having an activity and our sporting center is having an activity, there is going to be problems for the people coming to those facilities finding parking if you've got 100 cars parked around that block. Just 2 cars per apartment, not counting if they've got friends and that are parked. You also have limited parking times, I believe, still in the downtown area, don't you? And issue tickets, which makes it extremely unlikely that that apartment complex will survive if their tenants are constantly getting tickets for parking in public parking. It's going to be a problem, people, and we want that unit to succeed long-term, not just short-term. Thank you.
Just so I'm clear, because I don't know that I articulated it very well, irrespective of the Lee project, our current zoning code does not require on-site parking for anything other than multifamily. There is a required on-site parking component for multifamily, and there's no relief been granted to the Lee project related to their parking requirements. So they will be, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they will be providing on-site parking as part of their project in conformance with our current parking requirements. That doesn't
Yeah, you can't
mitigate
answer the
what Mr.
question as
Holmes
to how
is
many
saying.
units.
Right.
But I'm telling you, with over 40 years of experience in this town in real estate and development and rental properties, if there are not 2 parking spaces provided per unit, it's either going to create problems for the complex or the city or both that we don't want to have to be dealing with 5 years or 10 years down the road when that thing goes belly up if it's not provided. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Karen Shade Salina. I wanted to respond to some of the things said during OCCK's presentation at last week's meeting. And one of the things, I guess, my point that I want to clearly make is that when they talked about the number of riders on 81 Connection, the number of riders that I've seen coming through Salina has been no more than 1 a day. And I think there's some confusion in the term riders and ridership. Last Friday, I got on CityGo to pay rent, pick up prescriptions, shop at one store, and go to the library, and I got on and off the bus 11 times. So it can be quite different what's a rider and the rides. And unfortunately, the material they presented wasn't particularly clear. Another thing with ridership, with the construction downtown, all of those on the bus have lost access to the Santa Fe Mulberry stop. I used to get off there and walk to 7th and Walnut, so I would have had 2 rides there. But we can't get off there anymore. So I stay on the bus, ride it to the hospital, cross the street, board another bus to take me to 7th and Walnut, and then catch my bus from there. So perceptions of increased ridership, I don't know how accurate they are because people are coping with construction. And I think that's just, I just want to put that out there that someone may want to get real clear clarification on that. I wrote this stuff down for you so you could look at it at a later time and send one person out. I'm assuming it's a city official or worker to deal with this. And then I had some comments about the budget. I thought for the record you might want to know that while Salina City Go Riders pay $1 to go one direction with no transfers, in Wichita they charge $1.75. In Salina, we ride on all-day pass for $2. In Wichita, it's $5. We know we're getting quite the deal on riding, and you have to make some decisions about whether that's appropriate. But as I looked at the budget page, I found that the revenues that the riders contribute are less than 10% of City Go's operating expenses. And so that leaves the city and the Kansas Department of Transportation funding the rest. Now, one has to think whether all the expenses that City Go incurs are necessary for the operation. And I know very little about this, but I do know that they try to put their staff in uniforms twice because they take pride in their personal experience and their work environment. Those drivers are either bean poles or very small, some are round. They've not been successful in finding uniforms. That was one expense. Michelle Griffin who's the Director of Transportation, was a new hire. In June 2018, she filled a newly created position. I believe the Mobility Coordinator was also a new position. She does not drive a bus. I don't know if she dispatches. My understanding is her position may be more of an administrative assistant and dealing with mobility. So you can see that there's some things going on in the budget, and I'm just a rider. I don't know the details. And some of it, one needs to consider, like OCCK just took over Abilene's transportation. It's the one thing that I don't understand is whether the city pays to help subsidize the 81 connection. You're sending big buses up there that are essentially empty. Why can't you send smaller vans? That's just my question to OCCK. And I'm told OCCK is set up with lots of small corporations, and maybe that's why Patrick Wallerus's name appears on things like Disability Planning of Kansas and Community Living of North Central Kansas. To me, that means that their care really has to be taken, looking at their audit and seeing that the city is paying the portion appropriate for the fixed rate and the paratransit that is being done here. So those are just some thoughts. I'll have lots more on the Santa Fe issues and all of that at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. The issue of the bus stops being removed from Santa Fe was brought up last week. Is that something that's being discussed with either downtown?
Yes, staff's had conversation with Mr. Wilarius, and we've talked about kind of the general philosophy of stopping in traffic versus pulling out, and staff's also identified alternate locations that might be workable in lieu of the ones that are on Santa Fe. So our intention is to have an additional meeting and conversation to walk through kind of our original thinking about the redesign Santa Fe and what that might mean for OCCK, and then brainstorm with them, options and solutions. So it may not mean that the bus stop remains exactly where it was before. As an example, instead of being north of Mulberry, it may be south, but we plan to talk all that through with them.
Okay, thank you.
And may I Thank you for following that up. Thank you for your prompt response to my email a week ago. Didn't get that from OCCK, so kudos.
Well, I have to admit, I'm prompt on some, but not all of my own emails.
I
but
understand that,
Glad
too.
to have gotten that one right.
All right, no one else, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of June 24th, 2019.
Mayor Davis, I move we approve consent agenda item number 6.1.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Administration.
Item 7.1, first reading ordinance number 19-11007, unconditionally approving the issuance of general obligation bonds by the Salina Airport Authority for the purpose of financing the cost of certain capital improvements located at the Salina Regional Airport and Airport Industrial Center.
Let's see. Mr. Scraggs.
Yeah, I think, I'll try to start, and then we have others here that can certainly supplement. Tim Rogers is here from the Airport Authority, as well as Shelley Swanson and Mitch Robinson from the EDO. As kind of a mechanical background to the Salina Airport Authority and debt issuance in general, I'll cover that. I think Tim and Mitch plan to speak to the prospect in particular that we recently announced and how that causes, what funds are needed and how they'll be utilized. So I apologize, if, and number one, if I'm reading to you and if I'm telling you things you already know, but the authority for the Salina Airport Authority comes from statute, was established in 1965, and that not only authorizes the formation of an airport authority, but it speaks to issuance of general obligation bonds by the airport authority. And so it provides that if an airport authority wishes to issue general obligation bonds, the board of directors adopt a resolution setting forth the amounts of those bonds and forwards that to the mayor of the city for the city commission consideration. And the mayor is then to present that resolution to the governing body for approval or disapproval, and it specifically spells out 3 options for your consideration. You could disapprove the authority's resolution by passage of an ordinance. You could unconditionally approve the resolution by ordinance, or you could approve the authority's resolution and publish a notice of their intent to issue general obligation bonds, which would subject that then to a referendum election if a protest petition is signed by not less than 20% of the voters that of qualified voters of the city, and that protest petition would have to be filed in 15 days from the publication of notice. So what's before you today is that the Salina Airport Authority Board of Directors has passed a resolution initiating debt issuance specific to the economic development prospects that Mr. Rogers and Robinson will speak to you about. And they're proposing issuance of not to exceed $2,250,000, not accounting for issuance costs and some of the ancillary costs associated with debt issuance. And those costs are specifically associated with Hangar 959 improvements to the parking apron and the taxi lanes and other items that Tim will go into in greater detail, as well as improvements to Hangar 504. And those are the projects called out of the bond issuance, and they're in response to the recently secured economic development prospects. So I think that's it kind of in a nutshell in terms of what's before you. The ordinance that's attached assumes that you would approve it unconditionally and not subject it to protest, petition, or referendum vote. As far as the fiscal note, there's no direct cost to the city of Salina in terms of the debt itself, repaying the debt, and while their proposed general obligation bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the authority, being the airport authority, it does specifically provide that the general obligation bonds of the authority do not constitute a debt or obligation of the city. And so they have the ability to levy a mill rate, and when it talks about full faith and credit, it's referring to their full faith and credit without making us responsible or liable. And then Tim provided some perspective or background in terms of what the airport authority is intending to pay off those bonds, and that's the rest of that fiscal note. They do not anticipate an immediate impact on the Airport Authority's 2019 mill levy for the 2020 budget year. They plan to issue temporary notes that'll be sold with a 2-year term, and then the final decision on the temp notes, paying those off and rolling them into long-term financing for both Hangar 504 and 959 will be made as part of the 2021 budget preparation. He did note that the maximum mill levy that would be necessary for the debt service, if it comes to that, would be half a mill. And then he also provided a summary of the airport's authority's mill levy for the 2020 budget year, with 4.044 mills being associated with bond debt service and 1 mill being associated with federal grant matching. So their total mill levy of 5.044, and not anticipating an immediate need for a mill increase as it relates to this debt issuance. Again, I'll turn it over to Tim to make a presentation, but the options we've identified for your consideration are to adopt ordinance number 19-11007 unconditionally, approving the issuance of the general obligation bonds. You could disapprove the authority's resolution by ordinance, and we could assist you with that if that's the route that you choose. Or you could approve the authority's resolution and instruct us to publish notice of their intent, which would then subject it to a protest petition process and ultimately a referendum election if the protest petition is successful. So I'll stop there in terms of the procedure and I'll offer to answer any questions, but I certainly want to give Tim and Mitch the opportunity to fill you in on the economic development prospects that necessitate the improvements and give you the details on what those improvements might be. I would also note that, when you talk about economic, I'm getting a little bit more into the economic development aspect of it, but I spoke to the chamber board Wednesday of last week and noted, for a long, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and my sense of economic development prospects is typically they're shopping not only your community but multiple states looking for an incentive package that's the most favorable, preferably cash. Cash is always well received compared to others. We've always said, and it's not unique to Salina, it's a common mantra to say that we need to identify our strengths and market those strengths and land a prospect that's doing more than just shopping for a community, but actually see some unique benefit for our community. And we've said all along that the Airport Authority and the offerings out there are unique to Salina and an advantage we want to capitalize on, and I think we've certainly done that with these prospects. In terms of the incentive package, there's always advantage to investing in infrastructure that's not going to leave the community versus just providing financial incentives that hit the prospect's bottom line. I think this is a good example of investing in our own infrastructure such that we can land these prospects and bring them to town. And then we commonly say that we want to land quality jobs that exceed the average wage rate, and these certainly do that at an average of $26.04 an hour across the board. That far exceeds $15, $16 as our average wage rate. So when we talk about a home run, I think this is a home run economic development prospect. And the other comment that I made at excuse me, at the chamber meeting is when we talk about assets and things that we want to market, the Airport Authority is an asset, and I think Tim Rogers and his knowledge of the systems and programs and Mitch's assistants have demonstrated themselves as assets for our community to land these prospects. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and then turn it over to Tim and Mitch.
I have questions, but they're for probably Tim.
All right.
So hold on.
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to provide you an overview of the project today. And, okay, it's coming. With me today, Mitch Robinson, the Executive Director of the Salina Community Economic Development Organization. Mitch is here we weren't sure if he would be here. He had an eye procedure earlier today, but thank you for making it, Mitch. And so he clearly has a one vision on today's presentation. Thank you, Eric, for bringing that up. Eric Brown, the CEO of the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce, and Shelley Swanson, Director of Finance Administration for the Saline Airport Authority. This is an overview today of, I think, truly a true team effort. I'd like to recognize the city manager, Mike Scragg, and the senior staff. Very much involved in the process, too, as we've moved ahead and moved on these projects over time. 2 successful business attraction and recruitment projects. It is due to an economic development partnership that has been formed by the city, the county, the Saline Airport Authority, the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Saline Economic Development Organization. What I'll be talking to you this afternoon is really a look at how we have arrived at 466 net new jobs within 3 years for our community, with an upside for more, and as we move ahead. I'll give you kind of a review of LifeSave, the background there, then talk about One Vision Aviation. Then I'll combine the 2 projects as we start talking about, economic impact and what we can expect going forward on the projects. LifeSave Transport is coming to Salina. LifeSave is a air ambulance company. And they are interested in, they have executed lease, Airport Authorities signed a lease with Hangar 504 with LifeSave Transport. Attractors to Salina, and I'll talk about this with One Vision 2, really get into the area of partnerships that LifeSave has already established and working with the Salina Regional Health Center, the medical community here in Salina and North Central Kansas, the Sunflower Health Network, that taking advantage of what is in place there. Also, LifeSave really needs to fill the North Central Kansas gap in their service areas. And so opening a base at Salina became a business, part of their business plan, part of their maintaining the growth and providing a much-needed service and air ambulance activity here. An attractor was an available hangar, Hangar 504 at Salina, that was ready for them to look at. And again, these things do not happen in just a short period of time. They've looked at us for a while. They've actually investigated coming in and hiring and looking at potential pilots if they can hire them out of the community. They do, in fact, work with the current K-State Polytechnic aviation staff. There is a senior pilot, senior instructor pilot at K-State that is flying for LifeSave, kind of a industry partnership this summer. And so they have looked at the community for a number of months. And I think it's our capabilities as far as being able to make the improvements to the hangar and workforce recruitment and workforce retention and relocation of their future employees. I'm told that this doesn't work, the little pointer, so I still can't help but give it a try. But you'll quickly see here on this layout, and you have at your place, the location of Hangar 504 is at the bottom mid part of the location map there. And you see on the bottom right-hand side, you can see the location. It's a small 80 by 80 hangar, but you'll see how it kind of begins to fit for their operation. The top left-hand photo, you'll see Hangar 504 and an established heliport. And part of the airport facilities capabilities of Salina Regional Airport, we have already in place several heliports that are already airspace, to use a Federal Aviation Administration term. So we're already set up for arrival and departure of helicopter operations. And it's part because we also have a military unit, the Kansas Army National Guard, based at Salina, flying Black Hawk helicopters. You can see to the right, you can see the layout of the building. And up at the top of that drawing is the overhead of a Bell Long Ranger helicopter that'll be used for medical transport. That'll be based at Salina and crewed here at Salina. And you see a C-90 King Air that will be the fixed wing that will transition in and out as needed in the community. LifeSave has already been in the community coordinating with Salina Regional Health Center and the Salina Fire Department EMS department, being able to get prepared to provide this service. As we look at the hangar itself and the improvements that need to occur in the hangar, You can see there's a lower level stairs going upstairs. The bottom right-hand corner gives a quick view of kind of the offices and rooms there. Those rooms need to be upgraded for crew quarters. They need to be need to install a bathroom and shower facilities upstairs. And we need to go downstairs into the hangar also and do that on the back far right of the hangar photo, the top right. We also need to go ahead and sprinkle and install a sprinkler and fire alarm system in the hangar. Working with the development review team early on in this project helped us identify how we can accommodate the tenants' needs, their schedule to move in, and then allow them to then start 24/7 operations, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will ultimately run 3 24-hour shifts. But until the fire alarm system, the sprinkler system comes in, they'll only work 12-hour shifts. They will not crew or overnight any crew in the hangar, so there'll be no overnights. So we've worked that out with city staff, and that process design work is underway, bidding work is underway, but we would like to have this facility up and ready to go for the full crewing 24-hour shifts on September 1. They are in position to start operations on their 12-hour schedule as early as July 15th to provide this service to the community and the region and the area. Quick description, quick view of the costs associated, really the restrooms, shower and facilities, the water service to the hangar for the fire suppression system, sprinkler system, and the installation of the system and the alarm system. Total cost right now, $195,427 in our project budget. Jobs and payroll. It's not a big number, but it's still a significant number when you look at the value and the payroll. 16 pilots, paramedics, flight nurses, typically 2 pilots on shift, so about 6 pilots are hired. And then, depending how the crew, whether usually 1 paramedic and 1 nurse on the flight, and then you have room for the patient on board the aircraft. So you need about 16, and Chief Royce and Chief Nelson probably already figured out the staffing. You need enough staffing for an A shift, B shift, C shift, and you need folks for float in and out as far as vacations, training, and in and out. So very similar to 24-hour staffing of shifts at the Salina Fire Department. $26.44 per hour up to $43.27 per hour. And just a note, the Saline County average wage per the Kansas Department of Commerce is $15.85 per hour. So these are the premium jobs that Mike was referring to earlier. I'll move on to One Vision, unless there's any questions about Life Save right now. And we'll bring it all back together. One Vision, several decision factors that I believe were key in this process, and Mitch can amplify also. But I think one, an available hangar. Hangar 959, located at the northeast corner of the airport, Salina Regional Airport. Pretty visible when you drive by it on Centennial or I-135. 129,000 square feet. Central U.S. location for One Vision. Close proximity to Sioux City, Iowa, which is headquarters for One Vision Aviation. The capabilities of the Salina Regional Airport, key in their decision. Able to land the air carrier aircraft that they will be servicing, regional jets, 737s, those types of aircraft. The ability to finance the hangar improvements. The hangar needs certain improvements and that we'll look at in a little bit detail, but the next 60 days or so, this hangar will need to be prepped and ready to go for both FAA inspections and also air carrier audits. So many of the things we're taking care of will enable One Vision to be able to pass those audits and pass those inspections so they can be in full operation around September 1 of this year. We do believe that we had an innovative and flexible and effective negotiating process with One Vision, because we were competing with another community, another location located in a state in the southeast part of the United States. We were also had great partnership with the state of Kansas, the governor's office, the Kansas Department of Transportation, the Kansas Department of Commerce, and the incentives package that was presented by the Kansas Department of Commerce was significant and was very, I think, had a strong influence. Lastly, at Tractors and in working with One Vision, a strong local employee, local effort by the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce for workforce recruitment, workforce training, a definite plan. That plan was submitted, and because we do have to answer the question, where do you find, the first 50 airframe and power plant mechanics, let alone the 450, when I can think of about 5, 7 individuals in this community today that have the FAA certifications right now that are qualified, and when there is a plan in place to go ahead and address that. As we look at the operation, very similar layout, but 959 is the far north end of the airport. Again, able to take advantage of a rare asset, and that's a 12,300-foot long runway. Control tower services, aircraft rescue and firefighting capabilities that meet the FAA requirements for the size of aircraft that will be arriving and departing for this operation. You can see the hangar on the top right. And again, this is the size of aircraft that will be coming in. This operation will be virtually 2 shifts. They typically will be running 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, and they will be operating, as if need be, 7 days a week. They are the customer aircraft that come in by the air carriers. They bring the aircraft in, and it's to be completed in days. It could be 5 days, 7 days. It could be 15 days, or another type of check. It could be 30 days. But it's continuous work, and it's just not. So very rarely, in a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility, does this facility not busy, and there's not a shift work going on. We presented to One Vision an option to lease bays in phases as they start up operations. It is really not practical from the standpoint of what it takes to start up and set up and start up and get inspected to have all 4 bays running at one time, all at once. And again, it's the schedule of hiring employees. So the bottom left-hand corner would be Bay 1. They'd move into Bay 1, and they have a rate for Bay 1. They have a rate for Bay 2, Bay 3, and Bay 4, and we expect in 18 months that full rental rate will be achieved, and that will coincide with the timing of the 2-year temporary notes that's being considered today. And then we know where they're at, and then the Airport Authority Board can balance revenue coming in with any need for mill levy to make those payments on those bonds and structure that long-range bond payments for this project. I believe this made a difference in our negotiating with One Vision as opposed to the other community. Because I remember, I think one of our site meetings was, I really asked, and they brought their bankers in. They brought their, which was very rare in a site visit, that the company's CEO brings the banker also. And we asked the question, what's your biggest concern? And that basically was, the CEO, Jimmy Sponder, responded in the sense that I don't have all the line of business in right away, and I've got a big rent payment to make. This is what mitigated that, which said we've got the flexibility to meet that need and partner with you as a community and as a landlord, and to make this step. The improvements, as we start looking at improvements of this facility, and see, I learned quickly, Jack. I can go backwards too. So, as you look at this area, and I'll go by the numbers there instead of the colors, but like in the areas 2, 3, and 4, that's pavement area. That's pavement area that needs to be resurfaced, and so that we can, the pavement itself is good. It's 23 inches, 18 to 20 inches, 3 inches thick, but the surface needs to be resurfaced so these aircraft can travel over the surface, under power, not in just small pieces of concrete. So we need to redo the roof, put a new thermoplastic roof on the building. Don't want to put a multi-million-dollar aircraft in there and have the roof leak. The restrooms are very important in this, getting this done. Got upwards of 450 employees, shift work. Not everybody's there one time, but we need to provide that space. We need to do some asbestos abatement in this building to get it ready to go. Electrical upgrades are a big one. This is still some of the 1950s, transformers and power, equipment in there. We bring it down to today's standards, match up with what Westar requirements are. Westar puts new transformers on the outside, and basically it's a really replacement and repair of the older system so that we have a system. And again, we've coordinated these projects and this type of maintenance and repair work with the city staff, development review team, and we've got a plan to move forward. You can see items like area number 5 up there. You can see the paving 5 and 6. That is employee parking. Beechcraft, which was leased this building up through February of 2012, they just parked all their employees in area number 4, and they never used those doorways. That was fine for their employees, but that'll be an aircraft movement area along with area number 2. So we need to provide the new parking, and this is more parking than you would expect, but we need to provide for a shift of 200 employees at work and then a shift of 200 employees coming to work so that you can see the issue. You got to have space for the folks that are already there and the folks that are coming to work, and then they flip. This is hard to read, but it is in your packet. This is the summary of the cost, a total cost of $2.6 million on this project, and then I'll get to source of improvements and financing. Of the $2.6 million, $750,000 will be funded by the Kansas Department of Transportation and a grant that is coming from KDOT. So we do have some state assistance coming directly to the community for this project in that area. Jobs and payroll. There's an upside on this project. We're showing you 3 years, and I think that's a reasonable way to look at this project because they've projected out higher employment in years 4 and 5 on this project. But I think if we kind of manage expectations and kind of reasonable expectations, but this is significant also when we talk about 450 jobs coming into the community within 3 years. First year, those jobs would average $23.26 per hour, up to $24.28, then to $26.04. These are the average wages. Again, compared to the Saline County average, the average wage for Saline County by the Kansas Department of Commerce is $15.85 per hour. So I think we have really, moved the needle as far as bringing these jobs. And again, years 4 and 5 had the potential for additional job creation moving forward. So here I'll bring 504 and 959 together to look at the financing of the projects as we go here. Today's consideration is unconditional approval of the Airport Authority's intent to issue temporary notes for the project. Temporary notes in the amount of $2,250,000. $750,000 from KDOT gives us with total sources for $3 million for these projects. Hangar 959, total cost is $2,638,118, and we set the 504 project at $195. Do have a $45,000 contingency in the project, which is, I think, we think we are very tight on our numbers, on our pricing. so we didn't need a large contingency. There are costs to borrow to do the temporary notes, $17,100, and then the interest, we capitalized the interest, $98,123. And then you get, for the bond market always likes round numbers, so we round up to $3 million. And that is how we get there. So, almost done here, and I'll be available for questions. Mitch, Mike, and I really wanted to come up with, looking forward a bit. With these jobs coming, what is the impact on the community? And here's what we'd like to share with you, and you have at your seat the report from the Docking Institute at Fort Hays State University. And I think the ink dried on this on the way down here because we were working on this. But this was important, I think, to share with you and share with the community. When you look at the jobs that would be created by year going out 2020, 2021, 2022, we have 450 jobs by One Vision, 16 jobs by LifeWatch. The 16 jobs stay consistent, through this example, but One Vision is adding jobs. That is their intent to reach the goal they have as far as expansion. They're adding jobs years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can look at the impact, look at this impact. For those direct jobs that are shown there in year 2020, there's 44 indirect jobs and 48 induced jobs. So the job creation in year 1 is direct, indirect, induced is 208 jobs for our community. Now the payroll that's in there for the direct jobs is based upon data provided by the companies, the prospects, the new tenants. If we look at the indirect and induced jobs, the Docking Institute doesn't really know what those numbers will be. They kind of reset and go to a default position of minimum wage type jobs, but they say in the report you'll see which many of these jobs are actually higher. So this is a conservative approach that will come out, but the job number, I think, is based upon their modeling of what a primary quality job like this brings and does to a community, based upon the industry code and the modeling that they have that they can do over at Docking or at Fort Hays State. Then this has an impact as far as estimated sales tax, employee spending, and this is a short report, and the Docking Institute will eventually get more in-depth look at this project as these jobs come online. But you can see with the impact on sales tax in our community, it starts to build as employment starts to build. This is based upon employee spending. Kansas sales tax, first year, annualized Saline County sales tax, Salina sales tax, and you go out there out to 21, 22, 23, 24, 2024, you can see how that starts to build as far as, and that's just one part of it. That is not the other spending, the other activity, and that could be measured later on as these jobs take hold in our community. There are some additional benefits to the community that I want to point out. Number one, this will have a significant impact on enrollment at K-State Polytechnic in their aviation maintenance program. We will, for the first time really in my tenure here, be able to train airframe and power plant mechanics and have a job for them in Salina and Saline County beyond one or two jobs at one of our smaller FBOs. And these are the jobs that will also help the instructors and the professionals, the professors at K-State partner with a major industry to do some really innovative work as far as sustaining our aviation fleet and doing some applied research, working with a company like One Vision. This really does increase and has an impact on our air service. You have pilots that fly these aircraft in to drop them off for maintenance, and they will fly out on SkyWest flights, United SkyWest flights. You have airline reps that will fly in, because when an airline has a line of work that's with One Vision, they fly their reps in to be with that airplane, their maintenance department reps, for the time they have aircraft in the hangar, or going under inspections, or going under maintenance work, modification work. You'll have reps from the engine manufacturers, the APU manufacturers, hydraulics reps will be coming in and out in this, so that will have an impact. We have a greater opportunity to add United SkyWest flights. Having One Vision here gives us the means to talk to SkyWest and United and saying, now your aircraft on the ground have immediate maintenance response team. It's called AOG, an AOG team, aircraft on ground. And that's a three-letter word almost in the aviation industry. Aircraft on ground means that airplanes can't take off on time, can't meet schedule, or can't take off at all. If it can't take off, it can't produce revenue. So One Vision is a SkyWest Airlines approved vendor for air carrier maintenance. So we have, and also this project brings a new avionics shop to Salina. Part of the work that One Vision does is avionics. That's the navigational equipment on board the airplane. They are a certified Garmin dealer. K-State Aircraft, their entire fleet is Garmin radios and navigational equipment, and they've had to bring in somebody from western Nebraska to do their work, and so this will again be a plus to K-State Polytechnic, the aviation program. Recruitment and training, Eric is already well involved with this. Again, this is part of the discussions from the very beginning and working with One Vision, which, by the way, they really first came to us about a year ago. So it's been a year in working with One Vision. It just doesn't happen right away. But there is a job fair that's already scheduled. That is for July 18th, July 18. And this will be from the K-State Polytechnic program, the Wichita State WSU Tech Aviation Maintenance Program, Salina Area Technical College, from Fort Riley, McConnell Air Force Base, members of the military who have skills that can transfer over, their skills can be transferred over to an FAA certificate, and K-State has the capability to do that. Out-of-state recruitment, and then the July 18 job fair is set to go. And again, we do have the means to recruit these individuals, and it's because of the workforce recruitment efforts by the Salina Chamber. Again, the partnership and teamwork. It's the city, Saline County, the Airport Authority, the Salina Chamber, the SCEDO, Commerce has been involved, Transportation, the Governor's Military Council, Kansas Works. I met those two individuals from Kansas Works last week in Topeka. They're excited to be here, help us recruit these people, these workers into the state. And a big key is the Fort Riley Soldier for Life, the transition assistance program that will be utilized as we recruit the employees in. And now I'm really going through all there we go. There is a view of Hangar 959. That is that's an Airbus now. That's classified as an Airbus 220, but that is the size and type of aircraft that will be utilizing the hangar here in the future. I'm available for any questions that Mayor Davis, you may have, the commissioners may have, and then Mitch is here and Eric is here to also help answer any questions.
Start from the right and work our way over.
One of these days, you're going to surprise me and start from the left and work this and work back the other way. Thank you, Tim, and thank you for the presentation. I'm trying to get a handle on the total value of all the incentives that One Vision will be receiving is, I'm trying to break down, because we have the incentive package, if I understand it correctly, of $3 million, basically, but it's kind of split between the two entities. And how exactly does that split between One Vision and LifeSave. I keep wanting to say LifeStar because that's the one I'm familiar with, LifeSave.
Well, I think maybe come back, if I understand the question, is, there is an incentive package that's been presented by the state of Kansas, and that has a value in excess of $5 million.
Okay.
So in that incentive package is to provide the incentive to locate 450 jobs in Kansas and at the Salina Airport Industrial Center, Salina, Kansas. So that is a combination of cash incentive available for them. It's a combination of training dollars and assistance with employee recruitment. So
And
the incentive, the local incentive, is related to the ability to expend dollars to improve the facilities
Right.
and then lease the facility. There is no cash incentive going to either LifeSave or One Vision that would be public dollars.
Right, and that's, first of all, that's awesome.
Yes.
That's so good to hear. So, so the state is contributing $5 million plus the 750, and was that
Yes.
from the Kansas Department of Commerce or Transportation?
That'll be a Kansas Department of Transportation Economic Development Grant
Okay.
to assist with the physical improvements.
And then our investment here locally with the Airport Authority looks like in the range of 2.25 then? Or was that
2.25.
2.25? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was
Right.
understanding those. And thank you, I had asked for a copy of the lease with One Vision, and I really appreciate receiving that because whenever I see the word unconditional approval, I can only think of probably 6 things in my life that I feel unconditional about. And I had a question regarding the lease. It does, it references in here that improvements that are made, and if the tenant were to transfer out, that some of the improvements would go with the tenant. And then when I looked up here, I wasn't seeing any improvements that could transfer out with the tenant.
Right. If we approve a tenant improvement, then if it's a fixture, it doesn't go with the tenant. But if it's a improvement that the tenant piece of equipment that the tenant can pick up and take with the company, I'm going to say they install a tail dock.
Right.
A
right.
tail dock goes in around the tail of the aircraft and it may be fixed into position in the hangar, but that's a piece of equipment that they would take with them at the end of their lease.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. And then I just had a question, because, I mean, this seems almost too good to be true when I look at the projections for those job numbers. And this company's been in business for how long?
They've been in business in the existing location for 10, 12 years, I believe. I have that correct. Under the current structure and ownership, this One Vision's been in business like 4 years in their current, but the predecessor, there was a split in the business operations. The partner, there was another partner. Now there's only one owner, one ownership, thus the name changed to One Vision, and there's One Vision for the growth of the company.
Okay, and they have 50 employees, around 50 employees in
Yes.
Sioux City? Okay.
Right. And again, they do not have the facilities in Sioux City to do this expansion. I will add, and when I updated, the update presentation to the Airport Authority Board of Directors, the Airport Authority's Air Service Consultant and the community's Air Service Consultant, Gary Foss, has used One Vision in the company before. Gary still has a minority ownership in a Caribbean airline. When he was a controlling ownership there, they used One Vision for aircraft. And so, and SkyWest, having that audit, having One Vision re-audited and reapproved by SkyWest, And the other air carriers that will be coming are, you will see, when you see the livery on the tails, you'll know the airline.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So are there expansion numbers, just getting back to that really quickly, is that kind of based on an assumption of acquiring like the United contract since we have service with United? Or is that something that could happen independently of that contract?
The lines of business that One Vision is looking at right now, for example, one air carrier will have a requirement of 200 AMPs for just their line of business. Okay, that gets back to the earlier comment that when that aircraft comes in, once that aircraft is at the hangar, it goes in and the work is continuous. And that takes a workforce of maybe minimum of 50, minimum of 100. But this one air carrier is going to require, they want 200 technicians, power plant, airframe, avionics, that staff that flying. So the numbers are geared towards the business, the lines of business that is contracted for now, like with SkyWest, and that will be contracted for now that they have the lease, they can go out and firm up their contracts.
Thank you. And then I think this question is more directed for staff in terms of, in my recollection, since I've been on the commission, the only time that we've had a Salina Airport Authority bonding issue was for the Beechcraft Road improvements. Is that, I think that's the only one that I've seen.
Matches my recollection. Tim may know, or Shelley may know
Yeah.
better than I.
Okay, and did we provide, that was provided with unconditional approval at that time, or did we just approve it with the public notice?
It was unconditional.
It was all previous Airport Authority bond issues have been approved by this body as an unconditional approval. And that goes to the temporary notes we partnered with the city on to do Beechcraft Road with, and previous bond issues that we have done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hopper.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers. One of the things, if I remember from reading earlier, is this facility is considerably larger than the facility in Sioux City. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
And that's why we see an increased number of potential employees, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the facility at Sioux City is just, and there's not another facility available at that location for this growth and expansion, for this company as they're getting ready to grow. That's why they did a national search and looked at another community, another airport, another facility. Yes.
And you anticipate the 4 phases to this facility being done in a 18-month to 2-year timeframe. Was that what you kind of were
That's
estimating?
my expectation.
Yeah.
Mitch, I think, maybe have a view different.
Based on their discussions. Based on their discussions of their potential work, I agree with Tim. I think we'll see it well within 2 years.
And so, I guess my one question about the term of the lease, how many years was that for? I hadn't seen a copy of the lease.
It is a 5-year lease
5-year?
with 3 additional options for 5 years each.
Okay.
Now, within the lease, as we've laid out the progressive leasing of the building, Bay 1, 2, 3, and 4, we reserve in the lease, the Airport Authority reserves in the lease the right to lease unused bays. So Bay 1, Bay 2 get leased yet this year, and we have a short-term project that comes in, then we would offer Bay 3 or Bay 4 for a period of time. So we do have the ability to continue leasing up the building. It's not like there's an option out there that we can't, there's the ability for the Airport Authority to lease out that additional space as if they only lease out 2 bays.
And then one other question, if all 4 phases are completed, there's a somewhat of a shortfall as far as servicing the entire debt. Is that where the 0.5 mil levies comes in?
There is not.
Okay.
As we look at the project, it's getting to that full ability. When we lease that entire facility, The debt service for the facility is approximately $240,000 annually on that. And when we get to that full option, option 4 or all 4 bays, that lease rental would be $282,000 per year.
Okay. Well, then I guess I was confused where it said that anticipated there could be a .5 mill levy added.
Yeah, gets back to, that is the, the risk is we issue $2.2 million in geo temporary notes, and we don't have, not all the revenues there out of this project to service that debt.
Okay.
So, if you need, and I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think in 18 months, and within this 24-month period of time, we get to the full rental, and then we would not need the reliance upon the half mill. But if they're only 3/4 of the way, they get to 3/4 of the process, and they're at even at 3/4, they're $225,000.
So they're basically at a break
per
even.
year.
So that's what my question was.
And then-
Basically, 3 phases gets you to basically a break even then.
Get
as far as
halfway,
servicing debt.
we're at $150,000 annual lease payments. And so it provides the means to manage, to handle the risk of this expansion not getting all the way to all 4 bays being leased.
Is the company currently doing all 4 phases of this in Sioux Falls? So
No,
they-
this is, they do a small amount of, like SkyWest Airlines, a small amount of maintenance repair work at Sioux City. But this is their expansion, that we are catching, we're partnering with the community, with a business that's on the way up. This is part of the, economic development. Sometimes you get a big mature company. That big mature company was AAR Corporation that came to look at our community to create 250, 350 MRO jobs like this. But what came down to it, they wanted a lease for $1 a year. They went to Duluth, Minnesota, because they got a $7 million incentive, cash incentive from the state of Minnesota. On this project, we're catching this project, and as this company is growing and expanding. So, and they did not have the capacity at Sioux City, and we're in that area. Again, looked at, Salina was included in a search along with another community, another state, and then Southeast, and probably others, but we were down to one of 2 finalists.
Well, thank you for the opportunity that we've got. I'm sure it's not without some logistics to deal with. There's still challenges in there, but it's exciting to hear for the community. Thank you, Mitch and the chamber, everybody.
The only question I got, you talked about in hangar H959, there's 4 spaces in there. You got the option of, if they don't rent or don't lease all of those spaces, that you could sublease those spaces out. Are those subleased at a long-term lease, or how, if you got a company that wants to come in and lease part of that, are you giving any limitations on how long they can lease that space?
The way the lease reads, and correct me if I misstate this, and I'm looking over to Attorney Bingston, but the Airport Authority reserves the right to lease any of those spaces that are not, that One Vision has not asked to include in their base, roll into their base lease without restriction. So, but I would certainly sit down with One Vision and say, I have company ABC that is interested in space, but they need it for a year, and we want to put them in Bay 4. What do you think? I'll have to work with the tenant and with One Vision. Well, they may be ready to take that space in 30 days. So we have, and usually we rent, if it is short-term space, we rent that short-term space at a premium as opposed to a 5-year lease.
When that's sectioned off, I meach of the bays sectioned off?
They are not, no,
So if you did sublease them, you would have to section off?
no. We would not have to. We've
Turn
talked,
your microphone on.
I'm sorry.
yeah, we spoke to the tenant about this in the lease negotiations, and no, it is not the need to section them off. And it's hard to do in a hangar to section off. It wouldn't partition off, one bay from another. But it has to be a compatible use also. So there has to be work with One Vision in an event that we have that prospect coming. Now, is that something we're really thinking about, that maybe it could, or I don't know? Since we've really finalized negotiations with One Vision, we've already had one company come in and ask for a large air carrier aircraft and avionics project. And when we let them know, well, you may have, if you wanted short-term space, you would have to maybe be on temporarily with another company. At first, they said no, I think, but then they thought about it, and they're willing to consider it.
All I can say again is just like Commissioner Ryan said, thank you guys very much for your hard work and everything on this. I think it's going to be exciting for Salina.
Fully agree. It's a lot of hands were needed to come up with this final project. And
At this time, Mr. Mayor, if I can maybe let Mitch wrap up, any final comments that Mitch would like to make? And again, but before he steps up, would like to, again, thank Mitch and Eric, the hard work they've done. For example, with Mitch, I've not had to worry about the site visits, not to worry about, the communications with the Kansas Department of Commerce, those details that I am just not patient with, as people who know me realize I'm not. And so he's been, at times, we've had to say, kind of, when I talk about getting a project to the finish line, but getting the project across the finish line sometimes is that last efforts. Without Mitch's work, these projects would not have been across the finish line. Eric came in early on in the process, and we knew one of the big questions would be workforce. Where the workers going to come from? We have a good workforce plan. We have a good plan, and it's been tested by this project because these individuals they have been in the business a long time. They know what it takes. They will be hiring their own HR specialists to work with Eric and Kansas Works and that partnership. So again, Mitch and Eric, thank you very much. And Mitch, any final words?
I'm sorry, I just had one follow-up, Tim.
Yes,
I
that's
just
right.
thought of it. You'd mentioned needing to put in new transformers because the old ones dated from the 1950s and working with Westar. We didn't have, Westar was a bit of a stumbling block on the Beechcraft Road. So, has work been done to communicate with them so that
They have been with us when we've developed that project budget from the very beginning. They are not adding any additional new costs to this project. They are changing out the transformers on the outside on their cost, taking that cost, and then we're working to make sure that we get inside the building, the work done that matches up, that will provide greater energy efficiency in the building for less energy use, but also helps out the tenant with their utility bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim's really covered the project extremely well, like he always does. But, I just want to also stress that Mike touched on the teamwork, the partnership. I think going back, however many years for the creation the city went through to create the Economic Development Organization with the Airport Authority and the county and the chamber. I think this is just proof that, yes, it's worked. It's working. We're pulling forward, making progress, and the partnership. Tim talked about, the first question we get nowadays is workforce. There's no doubt of that. That's always the question. And with having Eric there and now his new talent acquisition initiatives, Latron North, first week on the job, he was on the conference call with this prospect on the third day and made very positive comments. He knew what he was talking about, and he's going to be a real asset for the community to be able to work forward on bringing players to the table from Kansas Works, the K-State, and as Tim said, Eric has already been working with all these people, and it's very important for us to move forward on that. We are working on trying to get a date. There'll be a public announcement with people coming in, including the company president and CEO. So we've not gotten a date yet, but we're working probably the week of the 8th or the week of the 15th is what we're shooting for. So as soon as we know, you all will know about that date and time. So we're quite excited about that opportunity to work with all the outside partners coming in and taking part in this exciting project. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. I think Tim's done it for us, but I'll be glad to zero in on anything in particular.
I think we are ready.
Okay. You guys know my number. Anytime you have a question, give me a call, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment? Any public praise? Bring it back to the commission for action.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 19-11007, unconditionally approving the issuance of general obligation bonds by the Salina Airport Authority for the purpose of financing the cost of the project.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance number 19-11007. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And again, thanks to everyone for their work on this. Let's see if the municipal band is available for that. We are at the point of other business, but before we get to our official other business, wanted to apologize, put Mr. Sprague on the spot. Is there anything that you can update us on with the baseball, Salina Baseball Initiative request?
Following the last meeting, staff met with representatives of Baseball Enterprises and kind of walked through their proposal and what the next steps might be and how we might be able to bring something back to you as a city commission, essentially to vote and indicate your support for the project. And so in addition to that conversation, staff met and kind of itemized everything that will need to occur to get us from where we are today to ultimately funding that project. And without going into great detail, assuming that you want to go forward with the transient guest tax increase, that's a charter ordinance to amend that. Charter ordinances carry with it a protest petition period, and that has to run, and then it takes effect. Assuming that it's debt financing at a parks level, you may recall that there's a charter ordinance that specifies maximum debt issuances by topic. Quite a few of those are at $1 million, and then any recent projects that came along, it got carved out, a water park being an example, a field house being an example, that have a dollar amount that corresponds to a more recent project. So water parks, I think, are 12 and field houses are 7. This would be another example of a need to amend that charter ordinance. We've talked about bond financing. So I tell you all that because what my intention is to bring you a resolution that gives you a pretty good overview of the big picture of everything that's going to need to take place, so that you're not just kind of giving a generic endorsement without a better understanding of everything that needs to happen. And then that resolution ultimately would instruct staff to proceed on all those different tasks. I think that then gets you as a commission to a point of a full understanding what you're supporting and what's going to be necessary to carry out that support. And that gives, short of getting all those steps completed and everything in place, that gives Baseball Enterprises a good sense of, your endorsement is an informed endorsement. So taking all that into account, needing to prepare that resolution, give Baseball Enterprises an opportunity to review that and give us any feedback, we've targeted July 15th as enough time to complete the resolution, let Baseball Enterprises take a look at it, and then get it on your agenda for action. So we had some conversation about, can't the commission just vote generically? And you could, but without you making kind of an informed decision, I don't know that truly represents a level of support that indicates we're an understanding of what all it's going to take to get to the finish line, to use Tim's analogy.
And there is coordination of efforts between our engineers, Public Works, and their desire to perhaps start on the
The patio?
patio?
Yes,
at,
there's been
Dean
conversation, staff, between Parks and Recreation and Public Works, we've been looking at the drainage issues and solutions, and then independent of that meeting I described, there's been some meetings of Public Works staff and park staff with Baseball Enterprises to kind of look at the physical location of the improvements we think are necessary relative to the patio project that they have in mind. And I think we've concluded that they won't necessarily conflict with each other, and we can kind of work those timelines in a way that works for everyone.
As long as,
Sure, go ahead.
as long as you open the door, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify or to ask, so have any of these discussions encompass some of the things that I know we've talked about in study session, such as like the scale of the project and what the absolute must-haves are to be completed, and some kind of a development agreement that incorporates replacement costs and how those are going to be funded if we go with turf, and making sure that we have like letters of support from the other entities to make sure that everybody's all on board with that? I mean, I'm
Yes,
assuming that all that's been communicated?
Right. The need for a development agreement was communicated, and you know, the level of detail that you're describing ultimately will be addressed in that development agreement. But the conversation we had, I pointed out, you know, I appreciated their acknowledgement that ongoing funding of operation and maintenance has not been something that's been provided for before, that we're going to have to look at how much we think we can debt finance, and we're going to have to look at the scope of the project and try to account for operation and maintenance costs, and that then may drive the scope. It may require reductions in scope depending on what we can kind of sort out. So there's a recognition on their part about that. They have a desire to, and they've communicated this early on, to have kind of an advisory committee both as it relates to scheduling and maintenance, and try to take into account the level of contribution from some of the big ticket stakeholders, and have scheduling that's in recognition of their financial contribution. So they have an interest in kind of memorializing that in the development agreement. There'll be quite a bit of detail that'll need to be finalized in the development agreement. But there's, number one, a recognition there needs to be a development agreement. Number two, I made it clear that one of our concerns is not just building it, but factoring in the financing of ongoing operation and maintenance, and that may impact the project budget and scope.
Any other topics? All right.
And Mayor Davis, you said you thought 60 minutes would be where we should start?
I'm reading faces. Let's make it 45.
Pretty close to what was in my mind.
It's closer. It's closer to what was in my mind.
We can always come out and extend it, so I mean, if
And do we want to add a 5-minute break to that?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Davis, I move that the City Commission recess into executive session for 45 minutes to discuss the city manager's performance evaluation based upon the need to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1. The open meeting will resume in this room at 6:25 PM, which includes a 5-minute break prior to the executive session.
And one addition to that, the city human resources department
Right.
will be joining us.
You'd requested the ability to have a document up that might be able to be edited, so Ms. Fisher is prepared to assist you in that regard.
Thank you.
I second. I don't know if we did.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of recessing into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in executive session after our 5-minute break.